we can understand the sense behind loneliness more deeply when we consider where we started in this life. When you look, when a child is coming into this world, it is full of lightness, playfulness, curious, wondering at everything. And for no reason there is a quality of joy. Not because it has achieved something or proved something or has become somebody, but just like that. And then, as it happens and as it is relevant in our development as a human being, we get into the conditioning where the parents give a name and say, you are so and so, you belong to our family, you belong to this place, you belong to this culture, you belong to this race. And in different ways we define ourselves. And we pick up all kinds of concepts and values which we base in our connecting with each other. And the child picks up every kind of thing which it feels can be supportive for survival. All attitudes, beliefs, values, concepts, because the child wants to come in terms with the world, come in terms with this, what we call reality. And it is necessary, it is part of the game, it is relevant, but yet it is important that sooner or later, at some point, we realize that it is a relative way of looking at life. It is a certain conditioning through which we are projecting and interpreting life and coming into the conclusion that this is reality. But this conclusion is not after deeper consideration of the nature of the reality. It is mostly because we have been brought up like that. We grew where everybody else in our surrounding is having these sets of concepts and beliefs. We also take it for granted that this is reality. It starts getting disturbed and it starts getting questionable when we come in touch with other cultures, with other backgrounds, people from other part of the world, with other upbringing, with other social backgrounds, other cultural backgrounds, other religious backgrounds, other family situations, other climatical backgrounds. Then you realize that what you imagine to be absolute reality is not so absolute. Then you start recognizing that there is something which is relevant in that context and which is functioning in a practical level, but yet it is not the absolute reality. I am bringing the attention to these aspects because once you become aware that we are believing these projections, this conditioned way of looking at the reality and coming to conclusions, coming into making judgments about ourselves and each other, about life, about how it all should be, what has to be achieved, what has to be attained, what is success, what is failure. So we get so much trapped into this when we are not considering it more wakefully and deeply. And these conclusions, including the conclusion that something has to be there to always engage us, to keep ourselves entertained, keep ourselves busy, so that we can have some kind of hold. It is all part of this conditioning. Because we are outward oriented. We are always looking at the other. We are looking also at the opinions of the others, what others say, what others think about us. If they approve us, if they are disapproving, if they are critical, if they are supportive. So we become very much dependent on the other. Interestingly, the French philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre has been known for this statement where he says the other is hell. It is not the other is the problem, it is just our other-orientedness in which we are trapped, in which we almost hypnotically believe as if that is the absolute reality. What is creating the difficulty? That is why when we want to understand the nature of loneliness, you have to consider it in a deeper way. Consider the background of our judgment, background where we started focusing on the other, where we started depending on the outside, where it became so much an entanglement that we start judging ourselves and each other on the basis of these kind of perceptions. Once it becomes more transparent to ourselves, more conscious to ourselves that this is not the absolute reality, this is only a projection. And that what we consider as normal and is absolute, in another society, in another culture, they may have totally different values. They may find it very strange when we are going with our values and trying to tell them that this is how it has to be, because they have grown up with other conditionings. That is the challenge, and that is what makes human life so significant, because we are capable to become aware of our conditioning. We are capable to understand ourselves more deeply. Without looking more carefully, without looking more deeply, we believe how it appears to us, and when certain things which we are expecting, wanting, wishing for is not happening, then we start getting disappointed. When we are not able to achieve and prove certain things, then we feel not worthy enough. When we are not having something to engage, and when we don't have usual ways of socialization and engaging ourselves, then we say, oh, I feel so lost, I feel lonely, I feel empty, I feel life is becoming meaningless and things are so baseless. So it is a certain kind of coming in touch with the relativeness of the reality which we feel uncomfortable with and which we interpret as loneliness. It is human, it is natural, it is to be considered very carefully and sympathetically. But yet, we have to be courageously honest to confront it more wakefully and deeply, so that it becomes transparent to us that this is not absolute reality, this is not the truth. Sometimes I give these very funny examples because it's more easily understandable, and it's also something to have a smile. For example, when in the modern Western society, in usual places where you go, you ask for a hot dog, you don't expect them to kill a dog and make the meat of that for your sandwich. It is called hot dog, but still it is not having anything to do with the dog. But when you go into some other parts of the world, like in the Middle East, or more in the Far East also, Vietnam, China, Korea, some of these areas, people have been used to a different way of growing up. And in their eating habits, eating a dog was considered normal. It was not completely unusual for them to have dogs in their menu plan. So you will be surprised when you go there and see that, oh, they are eating really dogs, and you cannot believe, how can you kill a dog and eat it? This is how we start becoming more alert, more conscious when we are confronted with the diversity of life, when we are confronted with the fact that we are living in a very subjective perception of reality, which is relative. And it is very important for us as a human being to bring our awareness to these factors. Because without that, we are imagining that the way we see, the way we judge, the way we go about, this is absolute. So we are used to a one-dimensional way of looking at life, where we believe the reality is so. But as we become more conscious, as we open our eyes to look what is really the case. Just to give another example, because this will be helpful to realize how relative all these values are and how differently it is seen and judged. For example, when here we invite somebody and offer them a glass of wine, it is considered as a sign of friendship. Nobody is offended when you offer a glass of wine. But just in countries where people see alcohol as a drug and are seeing it in a different angle, for example in India or in some of the Islamic countries, drinking alcohol is not appreciated. And if you invite somebody and they come with a bottle of wine, you won't be so amused when you are growing up in that culture. In fact, in some of these areas, when they are looking for a husband for their daughter, they also check, is this person having any bad habits? And bad habit is also when somebody is drinking alcohol. And they are afraid because they say that this person can drink more and then get into the drunkenness and will misbehave and will be very destructive. So they don't want to let their daughter be married to such a dangerous situation. Things are changing. There is a different development, different understanding everywhere. But you can see there are basic orientations which are so much different. And the more people are aware, the more people are considering, the more it becomes possible to see that our way of looking at the reality is not absolute. Our way of perceiving things are to be questioned. Without questioning ourselves and our way of judging and labeling, we are imagining that the way we see things, this is absolute reality. And all the conclusions, all the negative feelings, all the negative conclusions which we get into are also arising from the same one-sided view, which is only a projection, but not based on seeing the reality. So it is very, very important that we become alert to realize that it is necessary for a human being to go deeper and question the nature of the reality. Because without questioning the nature of the reality, we are imagining that the way it appears to us is the final truth. And this is very, very important that we as human beings recognize that human life is not like that of other animals, other living beings in this planet. Human life is very unique. It is also a unique responsibility, because the human being can observe oneself. Human being can notice one's own thoughts, feelings, emotions, reaction processes. And this capacity of consciousness which we carry in us is a very decisive factor in our development, and which is what makes it possible for us to open, to develop, and to become capable of realizing the potential of intelligence and love, to realize the potential of compassion and freedom. Because human being, unlike other living beings, comes with an open possibility. A lion is born and it dies as a lion, it grows up as a lion, it is in tune with nature, it is feeling at home, but it is not able to be different than being a lion. So it is with any other living being. A cat, a dog, a peacock, all the different birds and animals, howsoever beautiful and so unique they are, they have a different function, they have a different role in this manifestation of life. But the human being has a very unique opportunity and a unique challenge that we can move in both the directions. We can become very creative, very loving, very deeply understanding and compassionate, and become free. But we can also slip, get entangled, remain trapped in the one-sided way of looking at things, and become very destructive, very egocentric, very blind, and become so unsensible, inhuman, violent. This gives us a tremendous responsibility, because we are capable to move in both the directions. That is why we have to understand the nature of loneliness in a very deeper way. Loneliness is when we are only looking out on the other, looking outward and concluding things. There's another word also in English, aloneness. It looks almost similar, but yet it is very different inner states, what is referred through that. In loneliness, we are waiting for something to happen. We are unhappy because it is not going on the way we want. We are expecting things to change so that it goes according to how we desire, how we expect, how we imagine it should be. And when it's not happening, we are unhappy, we are sad, we become miserable, we get disappointed, we get depressed. Aloneness is very different. Aloneness you can understand when you consider what I have been mentioning in the beginning. When a child is born, it is coming from a state of openness and playfulness, from a state of curiosity, lightness, joy. Aloneness, when we go deeper in that in a wakeful way, will reveal us this possibility. Because in aloneness, you are not focusing on the other. You are bringing the attention to that what is taking place in you. Aloneness means you face that what is. Aloneness means you confront that what is going on. Aloneness means you are not judging and letting yourself settle in a negative state. You are bringing the attention to see what is all happening. Aloneness is the beginning of an inquiry. Aloneness is where you are turning the attention to yourself. That is why it is very, very significant. Although in the normal way of using these terms, mostly it is imagined that it is very similar, but it is very diametrically opposite direction which it is taking us to. When we are getting into the reaction of loneliness and go unconsciously and blindly into those processes, it drags us more into darkness, into disappointment, into bitterness, into isolation, into a state of inner hardness, inner frozenness. Because we feel we are not okay, we are not worthy, I'm not able to come in touch with others and have a good life as it should be. So we judge ourselves and we judge others in this kind of way. But what makes a difference is when you turn the attention to yourself. You bring your awareness to face what is happening in me. What am I feeling within? What are the desires? What are the expectations? What are the factors? What are the judgments which is working in me? So in this way, as your attention goes deeper into yourself, not only that your energy is not getting trapped in the negative processes, but also something very deep and significant happens. Your life energy is not trapped in these negative patterns of manifesting. And that is when you start gaining a new understanding of yourself, because that is when you see that when I observe things in myself, I don't get trapped in these reactions blindly. It is not thinking about yourself. It is not trying to figure it out and put it in some kind of category. It is just noticing things the way it is and going deeper. And this becomes the possibility for the human being to open up, to allow a perception which is a perception of the inclusive reality. Allow a perception where you are not only seeing through a narrow angle in a one-dimensional way, but your vision becomes open. It becomes inclusive. You start seeing the interconnectedness. And this is very, very important. That is what I mean. Encounter the loneliness in a different way. Start to bring awareness into the process of loneliness in you. And that is what will make the difference, because as you bring the attention and start looking at things, you are also starting to open yourself up to see and experience life more deeply. Otherwise, we are trapped almost caught up in a hypnotic level at a one-sided way of looking at things. And we engage ourselves with our so-called day-to-day life process, often without recognizing what is reality, what is the wonder behind all this. We see things very peripherally. So, for example, you put an apple seed onto the ground, it becomes a plant, it becomes a tree, and then it bears flowers, bears fruits which are tasting, which are having fragrance. And then you, without deeper consideration, say, oh, look what I have done. I have planted this tree, and my apple tree. You feel proud about it. It's okay, but consider it a little carefully. That is a childlike way of looking at it, and that is okay at that time. But we need to look more deeply. In this little seed, there is hidden so much mysterious processes which we are not able to grasp. There is all that what it requires for it to become a plant, to become a tree, that it grows when the right circumstances are there and bears fruits and multiplies and produces more seeds and become a blessing for all the human beings and other living beings who need this as a nourishment. The more you start considering things, the more you see how interdependent this life process is. How much care and intelligence is there behind the whole manifestation of life. Normally we are not bringing our attention to see these things. Normally we are only imagining that we have this life and this is how things look. And as older we get, without the right initiative and understanding, we often get limited in our perception of things. Only when we are bringing our attention to look and open ourselves to the reality, we become capable to see that all that we take for granted cannot be taken for granted. We are in this planet, this small earth in this vast universe. It is turning around itself. Through that we have day and night. It is going around the sun. Through that we have the seasons. And it maintains a certain distance which is very important. If it goes closer to the sun, everything will burn away. If it goes further away from the sun, everything will be frozen. But it is staying in a very minutely exact distance so that we feel well, we are able to feel at home here. The more we consider, the more we see what a wonder, what intelligence is behind this whole manifestation of life. And each detail of life, when you start bringing your attention to it, you will see that everywhere there is this intelligence, there is this caring process, there is this support for our being here. And this is very important, that we become more rooted in the nature of the reality. And then your connection to each other will not be from the state of unhappiness. It will be not a demand. It will be not begging and crying for attention. You are fine, you are joyous, and then you interact with others more playfully, more in a quality of celebration, more with a capacity to share and support each other rather than being trapped in a narrow role. And this is very, very important. So the deeper your understanding of yourself becomes, the more you are able to go beyond the entanglement in the negativity of loneliness. The more you are capable to go beyond the suffering and the shadow state which is taking place when you are unconsciously identified with these things. That is why inquiring into the nature of our reality, confronting our understanding, questioning our understanding of life becomes so decisive. That is how we start discovering more and more, because it becomes an adventurous process of realizing how things are, how wondrous everything is. Then you start seeing that everything which we take for granted is a wonder. It is not to be taken for granted. It is like a present. It is like when we are having everything the way it is, feeling good and comfortable, we take it for granted. Like health. When we are healthy, we don't appreciate it so much. But when we get sick, then we say, oh, how nice it is when I can go for a walk, when I can eat normally, when I can go jogging, for dancing, for playing this game or that game, go in the adventurous journeys to the mountains, and suddenly you realize, oh, what all things are possible and what all things you are missing. Previously, when everything is fine, we are taking it for granted. We don't see, oh, it is all a blessing. The deeper our perception goes, the more wakefully we confront the things the way they are, the more we start discovering. Then you see that life has created each of us as unique manifestations. What does it mean? It's very valuable to consider it very deeply, because when everybody is unique, there is nobody like you in this whole planet. Even twins, they are somehow different the closer you look. Then you see that how can we really compare? How can we judge somebody? What basis do you have to judge anybody? You are projecting through your conditioning. You don't know really the wonder of what is behind this manifestation. And people who have looking deeper use a term mystery. Mystery means it's not only some secret. Secrets can be found out and then you can understand it logically. But mystery means it is beyond the comprehension of the human mind. And this is very, very important that we become aware what we are capable with our logical, rational mind. What are the possibilities and limitations of our knowledge? When you realize our knowledge is very relative, it is not absolute. It is relevant for the game of the world, the game of the duality. It is relevant in our being in this manifest life. But yet, deep within, we need to become aware that all the values we put are not absolute. What we see is not the absolute reality. This is the reason why those who are insightful are reminding, go deeper into the experiential understanding of reality. And then you start seeing the interconnectedness of life. You start recognizing that the other, and in the normal way of going, we are going on comparing, competing with each other, judging each other, putting everybody in boxes in an unconscious way. But the wakeful way of going will enable you to see that you cannot do that. That's not right. That's not the right understanding. Then you become also very compassionate with each other because you start seeing how everyone is in their way trying to come in terms with life. Everybody is looking to be fulfilled, to find happiness, to find love, to be joyous, to have fun. So you start seeing everybody more differently. And you also start seeing how fragile everybody is, how vulnerable everybody is, because you see that a little virus, a little slipping here or there can change everything, individually and in the whole society. This manifestation of the virus, COVID, suddenly changed the whole world. Everywhere, societies and the behavior of human beings were limited, controlled. So many new challenges came. Many things which we were taking for granted became questionable. And we started seeing that, oh, everything can change every moment. So, bringing consciousness deeper into the nature of the reality is very important to encounter loneliness in the right way. Through encountering and going deeper into the understanding of ourselves, loneliness gets a different dimension. It becomes more aloneness. And when you can be alone and be joyous in that way, and see that there is a quality of joy in you which is independent of what you have or what is there. And that is why in the beginning I was referring to the quality of a child, a newborn child, who is, without having achieved anything, without having proved anything, is playful, is joyous, is alive, energetic, curious. And this is the understanding of those who have looked deeper, that our innermost nature is of joy. In the Indian scriptures, there is an expression which says the innermost reality is Sat Chit Anand. Sat means the truth, Chit means consciousness, and Anand means blissfulness, joy. It is very important that human beings become aware that we need to discover our true nature, and we have the capacity to go with our life energy in a different way without being unconsciously and automatically entangled in settled patterns of reacting. And it is this capacity which makes human life so unique, but it is also a challenge. It requires our initiative. It requires of us that we confront and become aware what we are, who we are, and discover the hidden nature of the divinity in each of us, the hidden quality of sacredness of all life. That is how a person who is looking deeper and becoming familiar with the nature of the reality becomes spontaneously respectful to all living beings, becomes spontaneously compassionate to all living beings. And there is a deep gratitude, not because there is somebody to be thanked. You become aware that the whole life is a blessing. The whole life is a present. It requires our courageous and deliberate encounter with the nature of our reality, so that it can become our own experiential understanding. When you hear all these things, you may agree with some things, you may disagree with something. That's all not enough. That's not the sense behind it all. You need to use this as an indication so that you come to the experiential understanding of who you are and what you are. And when it is your experiential understanding, nobody can take it away from you. When you have come to the direct insight, you are coming into the realization of the deep interconnectedness of the whole life process. That is why it is very, very significant that we face that what looks like a problem in a conscious way. Because without facing it in this way, we try to distract ourselves because we see it as more something negative, and we want to find some way to engage ourselves. Try to engage ourselves with television or newspapers or internet, social media, and all kind of ways which we can in many ways find to get distracted. Or some people go further into engaging themselves with some drugs or alcohol. And we have so many ways to distract and drift away from facing the reality. But that what makes a difference is when we realize that without confronting what really is, our understanding of life is not a real understanding. And this is our individual responsibility as human beings to confront who we are and what we are. There is a chance in it, that is the responsibility, and that is what makes all the difference. A person who looks more deeply and courageously into the nature of the reality feels life not as a curse but as a blessing, and is deeply grateful. Loneliness is connected with a one-sided way of looking at things, and we need to go deeper into the understanding of the nature of our reality and bring attention to the feeling of loneliness wakefully, so that we are not remaining outward oriented, but we start experiencing what we are, who we are, what is all going on in us. And in this way, open ourselves to see and experience the reality without being trapped in the usual judgments and labeling. It is going beyond our knowledge, going beyond our approach to compare and compete and fight, but it is learning to look, learning to face life the way it is. So this is why I use an expression life surfing, because in surfing, the person who goes, he or she goes on the surfboard, there is no motor in it. There's only the surfboard, the sail, and one stands and balances. There's the wind and the waves to play with. And one doesn't look at it as an enemy. One doesn't go into cursing and being angry and bitter. One looks what way to learn to answer to the challenges. And the more the person goes into it without resignating and with an openness to learn, the more it becomes possible. And you can see that there are people who go very interesting ways with all this surfing, and there are even sailboats which go all around the world without any motor, because they know how to answer and respond. To face life without getting trapped in this fighting approach, being open to understand, being open to consider. That's what I mean with the expression of life surfing. Facing the loneliness wakefully with this quality of non-fighting, without trying to reduce it into some knowledge in the usual way, facing it with an inner wakefulness that opens us to a deeper experiential understanding of the nature of our reality, the interconnectedness of our reality. And there we are giving and taking, sharing, playing together. We are individual, we are together, and yet there is the oneness, what is beyond and behind all this manifest life. So let this become a deeper inquiry, let it become a deeper understanding. Let it be a conscious initiative that it can become your experiential understanding. If there are any questions in anyone, we can take this time for that. Those who are participating from here or participating from elsewhere. If no questions are there, we just spend few minutes being wakeful and present to all what is going on, all the thoughts, all the feelings, all the inner process, without identifying with it, without trying to change it, without trying to hold to it. Just like one who is sitting near a river and watching the river where all kind of things are flowing by. One is not trying to interfere, just watching, just being present. With this quality of wakeful presence, with closed eyes, we sit the next 5 minutes.